people hesitate to step out of their comfort zone, especially interaction, right? So many of our interactions are just that. They're these cold transactions. I have now at the workplace when people say, "How you doing?" I go, do you want the passive water cooler answer? Or do you want me to actually tell you how I'm doing? The choice is yours, but choose wisely. Because I'll give you the water cooler answer, but that's where we're gonna reside. We're going to reside in the water cooler space if you want the water cooler answer. And that's okay. Not everyone are we going to sit and vibe out with and pray with. But if we were able to express ourselves, if we were able to lean into that space, if you will, more so, then I think overall we'd be able to show up for each other and then show up for ourselves and be a more authentic version of ourselves. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Vinny Brusco Show podcast. I hope you've been enjoying the podcast so far. If you have been, do me a favor, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast wherever you're getting it, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, wherever you're watching the show. Of course, spread the word and tell a friend, but also please subscribe, rate, and review. Makes a big difference with the algorithm and all that fun stuff that I know absolutely nothing about, but apparently it's very important. So do me that favor, if you will, please and thank you.
And here we go.
So I believe that by being our authentic self, we are able to tap into a frequency and a vibrational frequency and another dimensional experience. Let that digest for a second. I've always been drawn to surfing for whatever reason. I don't know if it's just the beach mentality, the vibe that's around surfing, but it seems as though I was born on the wrong coast. And my wife, who went to California, landed, said, if you come here, you'll never go home because this is your land. Maybe not now, but at one point I was energetically drawn to be in California, very much so. Like it's a vibe that I feel is a part of me. So I've always been drawn to surfing and surfing culture. I think it's incredibly hard. And there's just something around it that speaks to me. I tried surfing a long time ago, my first surfing experience, shout out to Mike Dazzler, and not the best, right? Given a board for someone who does surf, that wasn't very good for me. And it was just a nightmare. But I did have one of the most profound experiences paddling out, breaking dawn, watching the sun come over. It was utterly amazing. It was on my deathbed. It will be part of the highlight reel of my life. No question. Second time I had a surfing experience was I watched a surfer, took pictures of him just out in the ocean, and then serendipitously saw him walking to the beach the next morning as I was getting ready to leave. And I just approached him honestly and said, "Hey man, I saw you the other day on the beach surfing." He's like, "Yeah, I saw you doing yoga." Long story short, sent him pictures. He was stoked about it. It is what it is. Over the summer, which was a few months back, I had this really amazing experience around surfing. So I was going to take official surf lesson, booked a course, got the real big board, and I'm in. I'm going to go and I'm going to surf, and this is going to be amazing. Not the case. Still very hard. I walked 2 miles to go surf. It was a great walk on the beach. When I got to the beach before my lesson, I saw this young guy, his child, I'm assuming, and an older woman, and who I thought was his mother. And I don't know if she was going through any type of treatment or she had any type of disorder, but no hair, a little sickly looking. And I thought, okay, well, this is a beautiful moment. Let me not disrupt it. I went up and sat on the bench by myself. Minutes later, the guy leaves with the child and says, "All right, nice meeting you," to the girl, to the woman, and he walks away. And she sits on the bench next to me. And the moment that the energy fields crossed, I felt inclined, and this is what came to me. I felt inclined to pray with this woman. And I'm not a person of prayer, right? But I felt very inclined to pray with her. And we're making, and all of a sudden the small talk starts up. Wow, I couldn't get that sentence out. The small talk starts up. And we start just talking, and she says, I'm gonna go meditate on the beach. I've been listening to this meditation. And I was like, oh, would you mind sharing it with me? So she's like, no, that'd be great. So she sits on the bench and she cues up, and it's really more of a prayer, right? Than my traditional version of meditation. This is more of a prayer. And we're both sitting in the space, and it was very nice. It was beautiful. It was just like really unbelievable experience. She starts opening up about some things she's going through, and she starts crying and she starts sharing, and a lot going on in her personal life. And, we, exchanging our energy, I guess you could say, and just saying, holding space for this woman. And she goes on her way, and I felt inclined to tell her that I felt inclined to pray with her, right? And I just felt like it wasn't, I need to add that. I need to add that feeling, add that energy. And she leaves, I go surf. And as I'm leaving, she's there on the beach, sitting there, just by herself, reading or doing whatever. And I walked up to her and I said, she's like, how was surfing? I was like, and I said to her, I felt very inclined before, for whatever reason, to pray with you. And I'm not a man of, I don't pray, so to speak. And she had this great comeback to that. She said, prayer is a version of meditation that I learned. And I was like, wow, okay, yeah, that makes 100% sense. I never really framed it that way, but yeah, that's what it is. And she said to me, I was really down this morning, and when I walked down to this beach, and meeting you and, vibing with you and having you share with me and you showing up the way you did, it gave me faith in humanity. And I was like, wow, if I give you faith in humanity, you're fucked, lady. And so is the world. But I took that. I went back. I told my wife, I told my mother-in-law, my sister, like, if anyone's going to have this fucking experience on the beach, it's going to be you. Like, if anyone's going to be in this space, it's going to be you, right? Of course you had that experience. And I don't know what it is about surfing that brings me to this energetic, maybe it's the ocean, I don't know. But it brings me and allows me a portal into this beyond senses experience. And what I mean by that is when I got to that beach and I bumped into this woman, it was another dimension of world. It was like we were speaking on a higher level of existence. And the fact that I felt inclined to pray with her, as someone who doesn't pray, right? I do meditate, and her saying that now puts a new lens on that. As someone who doesn't pray, but felt inclined to say to her, I felt inclined to pray with you, and then her coming back and me being able to express that and having her express herself. It was something that was, again, around surfing that I'll take with me on my deathbed, knowing that when you show up as your authentic self, and I could have had this inclination and I could have ignored it. I could have just been like, I'm not saying I'm going to come off as a fucking weirdo. It's lazy. Like, what are you talking about? But I went with not my gut. It wasn't a gut thing. I went with just what I felt inclined to do. And I think so much of societal issues, societal snafus, if you will, I don't know, is that people hesitate to show up who they are authentically. People hesitate to step out of their comfort zone, especially interaction, right? So many of our interactions are just that. They're these cold transactions. I have now at the workplace, when people say, how you doing? I go, do you want the passive water cooler answer? Or do you want me to actually tell you how I'm doing? The choice is yours, but choose wisely, because I'll give you the water cooler answer, but that's where we're going to reside. We're going to reside in the water cooler space if you want the water cooler answer. And that's okay. Not everyone are we going to sit and vibe out with and pray with. But if we were able to express ourselves, if we were able to lean into that space, if you will, more so, then I think overall we'd be able to show up for each other and then show up for ourselves and be a more authentic version of ourselves. Because realistically speaking, we're just reflections. We're just mirrors. And I showed up for that woman in that space, and there are people who've shown up for me in my space. But if we don't give ourselves permission to lean into that space, then we don't know what the potential of that could be. And that could have put that woman on a completely different trajectory of life. I don't know. I have no idea, but maybe it did. And if there's a small chance that we could help people and we could do that, I think it's our obligation as human beings to do so. It's our obligation to show up as authentic as possible. Show up authentically in your interactions and in your relationships. And if you feel inclined to do something that's good, don't not do it because you're afraid someone might think you're a fucking weirdo. Don't avoid it because of the voice in your head, because that voice and that narrative that you're telling yourself is what's preventing you from potentially opening up a doorway with someone and putting them on a completely different path to being better or feeling safe or solving an issue that they're facing. So show up authentically as often as you can. This is your permission. If you need it, here it is. Go do it. Have a great one. I'll check you guys out next time. Until then, much love. Peace.